Hey y'all, it's Zoe. Welcome back to another video on my channel. So by the time this video goes up, it will be the end of November, which means it's the end of National Adoption Awareness Month, which is so crazy. It's been a really fast November. Don't know where November went. But I just wanted to remind you that even though it's not National Adoption Awareness Month after today, to always continue advocating for what you believe in and educating yourself on the adoption community, and make sure to follow my adoption pages online if you're interested to learn more about ways to advocate and educate. So today I'm doing a video that I actually got inspiration from an Instagram post. I wish I could find the Instagram post. I don't know who posted it. It's been driving me crazy, so I have no way to credit it in the comments. I have no way to credit it with a screen grab, nothing. But it's essentially the most frequently searched questions on Google about adoption. If you've seen the Wired autocomplete interviews, this is very similar to that. Also, my hair is really long, and this is like the length that it used to be. Like, this was the longest layer, and now look at it. Sorry, my brain goes off in a million different directions. Also, I don't have the fancy like poster boards where I can like rip off the little thingies, but the first section is what adoption. So the first question is what adoption means. Well, to me, adoption means that someone was born into one family and that family could not take care of them properly for whatever reason. And so then they are taken in by another family to grow up and to be cared for. Everyone has their own different definitions of adoption. The dictionary has its own definition of adoption. So it's really just kind of a personal definition. What adoption is Annalise hiding? So I think this is from a TV show, but when I typed in what adoption, that's what showed up. So I think it's from How to Get Away with Murder, and I don't watch that show, so I can't answer that question for you. And finally, what adoption costs are tax deductible? I don't know. That is a fantastic question. I didn't even know adoption costs were tax deductible, so there's that. Next is who adoption. Who invented adoption? I don't know. I'm assuming someone very, very long time ago coined the word adoption. Maybe it derived from some kind of British language. I'm sure adoption has always been a concept, even if it hasn't had a term for it. Yeah. Who can give adoption? I'm not really sure what this question was supposed to say, but anyone can give towards adoption, like towards an adoption agency. Anyone can be part of adoption. If you would like to become an adoptive parent or a foster parent, there are ways to do that. Yeah, I think that's how that question was supposed to be answered, but I don't know. And finally, who is adoption lawyer? It's a lawyer for adoption. I know that's probably a very redundant answer, and you're probably like, Zoe, why do you have so much attitude with us right now? But I really don't know how else to tell you besides it's a lawyer for adoption. So it's just someone who's trained in adoption laws and would help during adoption cases. Then we have why adoption. Why adoption is bad. I think that some people think adoption is bad and other people think adoption is good. I think it can be bad in the sense that there is a family you're losing and there is a lot of negative experiences that can go with adoption, but there's also a lot of positive experiences too, and I think it's important to highlight both the positives and the negatives. Why adoption is important. To me, adoption is important because there are a lot of children who are in need of forever families. There are a lot of children in foster care system and orphanage systems, not just in the United States, but in other countries too. And I think that adoption is important in order to get those children what they need, which is a loving family. They need a home. That's why I think adoption is important. People can have their own take on that. Why adoption is so expensive? I don't know. Honestly, the only costs I can think of for adoption are like any travel costs, the cost of raising a child, which are the same for about everyone, and then maybe if you're like paying an adoption agency. Honestly, the way that the United States works, it's a really expensive place to live. It's expensive to have a baby in a hospital. It's probably going to be expensive to adopt one too, but I feel like that question is very similar to the lines of how much did you cost? Like, the person you are adopting does not cost money. It is all of the factors that goes into adopting, like traveling places, hiring people. That's what really goes into adoption. Why adoption is good. Like I said, a child gets a forever home. They get a loving family most of the time. Hopefully they get a loving family. And I think it's able to give people a chance that they might not have if they are never adopted. Like if they are given up for adoption and then they are never adopted. Why adoption is a good option. That kind of rhymes. I don't know if this is in terms of like the adoption versus abortion argument. In my opinion, I think the best option is for the child to stay with the birth family. It's for the child to stay with the biological family. But I think that if you're not able to do that, then I think then adoption would be a good option for that. But I also think that you should try to stick with biological relatives as much as possible. So if the birth parents cannot take care of the child, then the next person I would go to is probably a grandparents, an aunt, an uncle. An adoption I would probably say is one of the last options. Okay, next is how adoption works. Well, I kind of talked about that in some of the previous questions, but essentially there's a lot of factors that go into it. There's a lot of file matching. You kind of have to go through agencies, but essentially a family gets matched with someone who needs a family, and then boom, that's kind of how it works. Obviously, it takes a really long time depending on where you're adopting from. If you're using any kind of agency, there's a lot that goes into it, like home studies, social workers, follow-ups, things like that, but it's a really complicated process. How adoption affects child development. Obviously, the age you were adopted will come into play in your development. So whether you were adopted as a newborn versus an older child, how much you remember from your previous life, if you had access to like kangaroo time, breastfeeding, all of those factors will impact a child's development. It can lead to attachment disorders, things like that. So yeah, how adoption affects mental health. So I've talked a lot on my channel about how adoption can affect mental health, whether it's through suicide or identity crises or something like that. So there's definitely a lot that comes into adoption and mental health. But like I said before, it's important to focus on both the positives and the negatives. Obviously, when you hear the word mental health, it has a stigma around it that it shouldn't, and you might think of all of the bad things in adoption and how that can, like, oh, she has so much trauma and stuff like that. But it's really like, yes, we do have trauma, but it's more than just our trauma. Like, there's a lot that can go into our mental health. Like, I would say adoption has given me both a positive mental health and a negative mental health. Like, I've been able to experience a lot of things in a good way, like learn more about myself, learn more about my environment, but also I've had those bad experiences too of like, oh, I really struggle with abandonment and I really struggle with attachment and so on and so forth. How adoption affects the child. So like I said before, depending on the age of the child, adoption can really affect a child one of two ways. It can be really good or really bad. Some people really like the fact that they're adopted and other people don't. And I think it also depends on the type of adoption. If it's like a step parent that adopts a child or a grandparent that's like legally adopting the child, then I think that can affect a child in a different way than someone like me, for instance, who never had the chance at knowing my biological family. And then how adoption affects an adult, I think it just depends. If it's a birth parent, if it's adoptive parent, it can affect in multiple ways. Being a birth parent is really, really hard, especially when you have to give up your child for adoption. There's a lot of grief that comes with that, a lot of guilt, especially if it's a closed adoption, just never knowing, never experiencing those milestones of the person that you grew for 9 months and birthed. That can be a lot. And I know for adoptive parents, not being able to answer all their questions, the limits, that's also something that they can struggle with as well. Finally, is adoption free? No, it is not. You cannot just go around and adopt people. That is not how it works. It is a legal process. Is adoption trauma? Yes, it is. But like I said multiple times in this video, it's not just trauma. There is more that goes into it, but that is a smart thing. It's something that you should be aware of, that trauma does go into adoption. And finally, is adoption income taxable? I really don't know what this question meant. I don't know, because to me, when you adopt a person, that person becomes your dependent, especially if they're a child. And I don't really know if dependents are taxable. I literally just started doing my taxes, so I have no idea. But in terms of like adoption of an animal, I don't really know. But I'm just showing you what the internet auto completes for me. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something. I know I was very repetitive in this video, but a lot of the most searched questions are kind of hinting at the same ideas. That is the end of my National Adoption Awareness Month videos for 2022, so I hope that you enjoyed them. I know it's after Thanksgiving and I haven't put up my Vlogmas videos, but that's because since National Adoption Awareness Month ended on a Wednesday, I didn't want to start my Vlogmas until December 1st, so that Thursday. So that first clip I'll put is going to be my Thanksgiving, and which I need to finish filming actually, so. And yeah, that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Happy End National Adoption Awareness Month. Happy December, happy holidays, and I'll see you all in Vlogmas. Bye!